Cold calling is the number one way to book meetings and is the skill that separates average reps from top sales performers. And let's be honest, most of the advice out there isn't helping you book more meetings simply because it's not coming from day-to-day sales professionals. My name is Matteo and I currently work in the sales team of one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And today I'm giving you a complete cold calling masterclass. I'll break down for you all the secrets and techniques that I use every single day to consistently book meetings and that top sales reps in world-class tech companies use to consistently fill their calendar and sales pipeline. Well, first of all, you may be wondering if I can send out thousands of emails, with outreach tools or hundreds of LinkedIn messages on autopilot, why should I manually cold call people and prospects? Well, the reality is that cold calling is still and will continue to be, in my opinion, the most effective way to book meeting in your calendar. And the reason is that it's actually hard to do cold calling, right? It's not easy. And just a few sales reps do it the right way. And cold calling works extremely well because it's human. And I'm not talking about AI cold calling because that's probably not gonna work at this stage. You have to use your own voice and use your own emotional connection to the prospect in order to close the meeting. And cold calling is direct because you don't have to wait days, weeks, or even months for a prospect to get back to you if they just need to pick up the phone. And if you do it the right way, it's a zero BS method, meaning you're not bullshitting the prospect, but you're actually providing value in the cold call. Be respectful. And this is the way that professionals use to consistently book meetings. And if you have to picture cold calling in your mind, you can see cold calling as a professional sport. And like a professional sport, what you need to become better and better every single day, week, and month is volume or repetition. So consistently cold calling and technique and adjustments that you use every single month to become better. But the important thing is that you don't stop the action, right? So from going 0 to 1, the most important thing is just to pick up the phone and start calling. And in a second, I'll share with you the exact secrets that you can implement to be successful from day one. To me, it's funny to see that most sales gurus out there will start telling you the only thing that you need is a good script and good tonality. The reality in the sales world, and especially in B2B high-ticket complex deals, is that when you call, there are variables that affect your cold calling rate. And these variables are very important to know, and you have to understand this variable deeply before you confront any of your results with others people's results. So what do I mean by that? When you work in B2B sales, there are 3 things that affect your cold calling performance even before scripts and tonality. And the 3 things are territory, customer segment, and contact enrichment strategy. So first of all, the territory. It's very different if you cold call in Germany or if you cold call in the US. For example, Germans are much more privacy oriented than US people. And what this means is that when you call, the pickup rate in the US is typically much higher than the one that you have in Germany. Because on average, if Germans see, a call from a random number, they won't pick up, or it's much harder for them to pick up. And so this affects your pickup rate, your, meetings booked, and the pipeline created. Also, when you're calling in a territory, what is required in most sales team, and this is why you'll see, all job posting requiring this, is the language of the country you're calling to. Typically, they require being native in the language of your territory, especially if you're calling SMBs and enterprise. If you're calling digital native companies, for example, I'm working with digital native customers, startups, scale-ups, and these kind of companies, English is enough because it's, the main language across borders. But typically, if you're selling to SMBs and mid-market or enterprise, traditional organizations, you will be required, German if you are calling in Germany, Portuguese if you're calling in Portugal, English if you're calling in the US or UK, Ireland, and Italian if you're calling in Italy. So you have to keep that in mind. Then your customer segment. So how you cold call in B2B is very different from how to call in B2C. For example, I see many cold callers now going viral that I think are very good, that are selling insurance in the US. But, this kind of sales is B2C. So the kind of framework that you will see, this cold calling selling insurance in the US, to consumers is very different from what you use in B2B if you're selling to SMBs, mid-market organizations, or enterprise. So you have to adapt your script and how you say things and how you communicate depending on your segment. And also you have to keep in mind that the larger the organization, the harder is to get in touch with the direct decision maker. So for example, if I'm, selling insurance and I'm calling a consumer, I'm talking directly to the decision maker, and so you'll see those pitches be more aggressive. But for example, if you're selling enterprise deals, multi-million-dollar deals in enterprise, typically, you won't be able to call directly the CEO or the one who takes the decision for the specific department to buy your software solution. You will have multiple people before that you connect to, the so-called gatekeepers, that you need to persuade so that you can enter in contact with the ultimate decision maker. And sometimes you won't know exactly who is the exact decision maker before you talk with a bunch of gatekeepers. The smaller the organization, the easier will be for you to find the right content and contact directly the decision maker. For example, if you're selling something technological, you'll try to call directly a CDO, and he will be more reachable than a CTO of a 2,000 employee company. So to clarify, you shouldn't use the script that you see like in B2C for B2B because it's very different. So you have to understand what you are selling and your customer segment first before you draft any script and understand, all the tips and tricks that you can use. And the third thing that will affect your strategy even before scripts and tonality is your contact enrichment strategy. Because at the end of the day, the numbers of your meetings booked and the pipeline that you generate also depend a lot on the quality of numbers that you find. If you call 100 shitty numbers, well, guess what? You won't have any pickups and you'll think that your strategy sucks. So you need to make sure that you have good numbers. And to do so, there are dozens of contact enrichment tools out there. Some of the most famous, and I'm not sponsored by them, are, for example, Lucian and Apollo. You can find pretty good numbers on those tools. However, you have to keep in mind that some tools perform better for some geographic regions than others. For example, you might have a tool that has very good numbers because it has a lot of data and databases for US companies and US prospects, but actually is not very good for EU. Or vice versa, you might have a tool that is very good in finding numbers for EU, or more specifically, let's say German and Italian companies, but not very good for US. So my recommendation is to try out multiple tools until you find the one that clicks for your exact territory. So having said that, guys, in my experience, I found out some principles, secrets, and scripts that work in any market, any industries, and that you can apply successfully to almost any segment. So in my experience, what I've seen working the best is calling right after lunch, around 2 p.m., so early afternoon. And why is that? Because people in the morning are typically focused on what they have to achieve during the day. So they are not very responsive and reactive when you call. Actually, they get very annoyed and disturbed. Imagine you are like in your morning focus and you get calls. It's annoying. You don't wanna receive calls in the morning. If it's too early, some people say to call C-level executives when they commute. I don't find that working very well, to be honest, because, people want to have a bit of quiet time during the day. And if you call them directly at, 8 a.m., honestly sucks. And during the morning, they have, focus meetings, and it's just not a good time to call, in my opinion. So what I suggest you try is call directly after lunch. Also during lunch could work, but I think from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., or let's say to 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. can work very well. Why? Because people after lunch are typically way more distracted and they will pick up the phone much easier. And also they'll stay on the phone for longer because, they are out of their focus zone because they just had lunch or in the so-called lunch slump time. And so they'll stay on the phone longer. They'll also sometimes enjoy having a talk. So I find it much more successful to call between, 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. Please adjust this based on the time that people typically have lunch in your geographic region, and let me know how this works. Number 2, you want to be prepared when you call. And for a great preparation, you need 2 things. First of all, good contacts, and we already talked about that. So make sure you have a good contact enrichment tool. So you make sure you have good contacts and you're calling the right people. You don't want to, spam call the wrong people. So get good phone numbers in. And second of all, you want to have strong contacts. And when I say strong contacts, is because I see many sales reps that just call some accounts just because they are in their territory, or just because you want to tackle them, but you actually didn't take the time to research a bit before about the company you are talking to, or you're just spam calling hundreds of people, right? That is not effective. So make sure you prepare. And when I talk about preparation, there are 3 different points that you can prepare. If you're doing enterprise sales, you have to do more preparation and more research upfront than if you were to doing SMBs. So smaller number of accounts and less people to contact. Make sure you double down on research. If you have a big territory, thousands of accounts to call, try to find one thing that is quite common between territory and the accounts, so that you can use that as your research to use in the call. So for good preparation, I give you some alternatives. So first of all, you can research about the project you're working on, or you can find news about company achievement like funding, new market expansion, or product launch. But my favorite, and I think this is the best to use, is use a problem or challenge that that you have researched and it's recurring across the industry. And this is the best, in my opinion, value point to point out a problem in this industry and digging down on that to make sure that the prospect remains engaged, and is the best way to earn trust with the prospect because he feels that you understand his industry and his problems. And third tip before dialing is making sure you're calling from a quiet space. I see, those sales floors with hundreds of reps, or, imagine when you pick up the phone and you get a sales call and you immediately hear that so disturbing, noisy background that you realize immediately before the rep has even started speaking that is a sales call and it's a call center or whatever. So that immediately puts you in a low ticket, kind of $10 a month kind of product. Someone wants to say something for your phone. So make sure you're calling from a quiet space. This really, guys, it's a small thing, but makes a whole difference. If you're calling from a quiet space, the prospect can feel your call as a professional call, and you are positioning yourself as someone that is selling high-ticket, complex software products or B2B high-ticket products, and not just $5 a month kind of products. And the prospect won't have the feeling that you are spamming people and say, hey, this is Matteo, blah blah blah. So you don't want to call from a noisy environment. I know sometimes it's hard because if you work in a company with a lot of sales reps, it's noisy. But if you make sure to find a spot that you can call quietly, guys, this will make a huge difference. Okay, guys, now let's jump into some scripts that you can use effectively from day one to book meetings. Remember that when you're calling, your goal is not to sell anything, but just book a meeting. You want to sell on a meeting. You want to understand more. Depending on how complex the solution that you are selling is, you may require 1 meeting, 2 meetings, 3 meetings. Typically, 1 to 2 meetings is enough. But the goal of the cold call is not to sell anything. So don't pitch, really don't pitch. Probably the most important tip that I can give to you, don't pitch. Now let's jump into some of the scripts that I use and that I crafted for you that you can just replicate from day one. So guys, I want to give you multiple so-called openers so that you can test multiple of them and find the one that fits you. So the first opener that I wanted to give you guys is what I call permission first. So the script goes as the following. Hey, this is Matteo from Cloud Nova. Am I speaking with name from company? And the prospect most probably will say yes, who's talking, but you get the first yes in. And then you go I'll keep this super brief. Would you have just 1 minute for us to talk? So guys, let me give you a real example. Hey, this is Matteo from Cloud Nova. Am I speaking with Daniel from Inside Flow? Yes, what do you want? Great, I'll keep this super brief. Would you have just 1 minute for us to talk? So this opener, in my experience, works very well because typically you get 2 yeses in a row. And when you get 2 yeses in a row, the prospect's subconscious is now positive to receive your messages. And why do you get 2 yeses in a row? And the thing is that because you're asking, first of all, if the name is correct. And if you get the right number, the name will be correct. And then you ask for permission. And this is very important because you see hundreds of sales reps that start pitching as soon as they get, the first confirmation, Is this Daniel from Inside Flow? They will just start pitching and propose their solution. Here you set yourself apart because you are very respectful of their time and you are actually not pitching anything, and you actually will trick curiosity because you ask if the prospect has just 1 minute to talk, and I guarantee you that a lot of time and people will tell you like something that they have just 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and once they tell you that, it's great because you'll see that most times they'll stay with you on the phone for 2 to 3 minutes. So when they'll tell you like, hey, I have just 5 or 10 seconds, they'll actually ended up in the call for 1 minute, and you will have earned the time. So they will pay much more attention to what you say after rather than if you were trying to pitch right after. The second opener that I wanted to give you guys is what I call permission plus context. And it goes as the following. Hi, name. I just read about relevant topic. My name is Matteo from Cloud Nova. Do you mind if I take 1 minute? I'll explain exactly why I reached out, and then you can tell me if it makes sense to chat. And here's a real example with our prospect Tom from a fintech company. Hey Tom, I just read the news about your new partnership with the Visa for the US market. My name is Matteo from Cloud Nova. Do you mind if I take 1 minute? I'll explain exactly why I reached out, and you can tell me if it makes sense to have a chat. So this opener is also very good. It's similar to the first one. So meaning you always ask for permission, but you give a bit more context and you use a trigger from a news or something that you have read about the company to give more relevance and context to your call. So opener number 3 is very tactical, and you'll be amazed on how much this works, and is what I call we spoke before. And we are assuming that we spoke before with the prospect, even if that didn't happen. So it goes as the following. Hey, name, this is Matteo from Cloud Nova. We spoke X months ago. So let's take a real example with Jonas from an HR tech company. Hey, Jonas, this is Matteo from Cloud Nova. We actually spoke 3 months ago, and you told me to call you back. And you stop here. And the interesting thing is that as prospect gets a lot of calls, even if they haven't heard about you before, they will assume that you actually have already called them, right? And they will say like, hi Matteo, yes, I remember, but they won't remember. And this works very well because typically people tell you to call again in the future, and you'll use the exact objection and way out that prospect use to jump out from a call as your main starting point. And so now the prospect will feel like they have to listen to you at least for 1 minute on what you are about to say. Now, after the opener, let's jump into the value framework part. And for this part, as I told you before, I really like to use a common challenge that I know the industry and companies are facing. So the script goes as the following. I'm reaching out because I speak with a lot of ICP roles at company type who are dealing with key scenario. One thing I keep hearing is relevant challenge. Is that something you are seeing on your side too? And guys, let me give you a bunch of examples that you can use for multiple industries. So let's take, for example, a fintech example or a fintech company. You could say something like, I'm reaching out because I speak with a lot of CDOs at B2B fintech companies that are scaling their transaction volume. One thing I keep hearing is that performance becomes unpredictable during peak hours. Is that something you are seeing on your side too? Or let's take a traditional SaaS company. I speak with many VPs of engineering at early stage SaaS companies. A common theme is that infrastructure costs tend to grow faster than revenue in the first scaling phase. Is that something you are noticing too? Or let's take a manufacturing example. I'm reaching out because I speak with a lot of digital transformation leads in manufacturing, and a consistent challenge is getting real-time visibility across machines and production lines. Is that something you are dealing with as well? And this value part, again, works very well because you're pointing out something that you know the industry has challenges with, and you're not pitching anything. You don't pitch anything, right? Guys, remember this, don't pitch anything. So you'll stand out from the crowd of sales reps that start pitching directly. So if they say yes to the problem that you have pointed out for the industry, your goal now is to book the meeting. And the best thing is to book the slot live on the call. So you don't want to arrange it via email, but the goal should be to book it straight on the call. The first approach that you can use is to propose 2 time slots that work for you. So you could say something like, got it, and this is exactly why I'm calling, would it make sense for us to have a 15-minute chat later on this week, for example, on Thursday at 3 p.m. or Friday at 10 a.m.? I could walk you through the exact steps that CDOs at B2B fintech companies are doing to stabilize performance during peak transaction loads. Or a second variation for this could be to mean that you're speaking with VP of operations. Perfect. I could walk you through the exact steps that VPs of operations at B2B SaaS companies are taking to tackle this problem. What about Thursday at 10:30 a.m. or Friday at 2 p.m.? Would that work for you? So if they agree on a slot or they tell you no, Thursday at 10:30 a.m. doesn't work, but could work at 4 p.m., great. Now you have secured the meeting and you'll ask directly for the email to confirm that the prospect received the slot live on the call. But most of the time you'll hear the prospect saying something like, hey, just send me an email, we're recording it there. And that is a very common objection. And what you want to do in this situation is, yes, send an email, but with a calendar placeholder directly. So you could say something like, sure, I'll send you a quick calendar placeholder right after this call, along with a few other options that could work on my end. If the placeholder doesn't work, please let me know which other slot could fit your calendar. And then you want to ask for their email to send their calendar to, and always confirm the spelling of the email so you make sure you have the right one. And sending a placeholder rather than just random slots is very important, because the prospect will see it in his calendar, and now they will feel you that they have at least to respond to you on that random placeholder that will tell you 90% of the time the placeholder that you will send will have to be changed, but at least you'll get another slot because you agreed that he would communicate to you a slot that could fit his schedule. Okay guys, but now let's be real. A lot of time the prospect could tell you that he's not actually seeing the problem that you mentioned in the value framework. So what you could say is something like, no problem at all. Out of curiosity, what's the biggest challenge you are facing in their area right now? Maybe I can point you in a helpful direction. Or an easier one that I really like. Got it, Mark. Thank you for sharing. Just for me to understand better, if you could improve one thing tomorrow in your operations department, what would that be? And this is a great question because you actually directly open the floor to the prospect to tell you what is a problem that they are facing right now. And if you realize that the problem that the prospect now tells you is something that actually your product can solve, then you want to try to dig more with more follow-up questions. But if you realize that the problem that the prospect brings up is something actually not relevant with your product, that's also great learning, and you just want to move on and maybe tweak a bit your ICP because you learned that probably you didn't actually call the right person. And when it comes to the follow-up questions, you want to dig and double down on the exact problem that the prospect just told you. So don't come back on your old script, just stick to what the prospect is telling you. And this will show active listening. And active listening is such a skill that is so underrated but so powerful in the modern age, because people now have attention spans as monkeys. They're not listening to what other people are saying. And if you actually show that you are able to adapt and listen to what the prospect says, this goes a long way. And what I always suggest sales reps and people that ask me about sales is to listen more than what you talk. So listen. Active listening is such an important skill. Talk less. If you're not sure about what to say, just shut up and listen what the prospect is telling you. And I guarantee you this will go a long way. Now, guys, I want to give you some sauce regarding tonality, because tonality is such important, especially because the person cannot see you, so they will just hear your tone. And sometimes the tone is much more important on what you say. So the number one thing in cold calling is to have a slow pace when talking and not a fast pace, overly excited tonality. So you want to stay low, calm and relaxed, slow and clear words instead of speaking fast and be overly excited. So now, guys, let me give you a quick example using the opener that we have used before, right? So let's spot the difference. Hey, this is Matteo from Cloud Nova. I'm speaking with Daniel from Inside Flow. Great. Would you have just 1 minute for us to talk? Instead of a professional sales rep, hey, this is Matteo from Cloud Nova. Am I speaking with Daniel from Inside Flow? Great, I'll be super brief. Would you have just 1 minute for us to talk? Can you spot the difference? The The second version sounds much more professional than the first one that seems like a newbie in sales, even if the script was the same. So tonality really goes a long way. And sometimes you can, and if you want to practice this, you can overly exaggerate and be super slow when you call prospects, right? Because if you are very slow and you say words in a clear way, your message sounds much more professional and it really sets you apart. So if you're calling from a quiet environment, you speak slowly and you speak with a low confident tonality, this will position yourself as a premium seller and open doors for you. Now, when it comes to cold calling routine, my suggestion for you is to try call almost every day from Monday to Friday, but not like calling like 8 hours per day. It doesn't make sense. So it's better to call, 1 to 2 hours every single day than calling 8 hours straight for one day and not calling for the other four. So you want to at least try to enjoy a bit the journey. So it also doesn't make sense for me to call like 4 hours every single day from Monday to Friday, because you will start hating cold calling, you will start hating rejection. So keep your best energies for cold calling, because if you have good energy, good intention, and you are prepared for cold calling, your results will really skyrocket. So try to keep your cold calling session 1.5 to 2 hours per day, and keep 1 hour to do account research and contact enrichment for the next day, so you have prepared your batch of accounts that you'll be calling the next day. So you don't want to do the research and the contact enrichment the same day that you're calling. It's always better to be prepared and fresh with accounts that you prepared the day before, so you can tackle your day and start getting those meetings in. So guys, now let me share with you some of the numbers that you can use to compare your results to. So top BDRs and SDRs calling, especially I'm talking about now the SMB segment, so not enterprise companies, but small, medium businesses. You can aim for something like from 80 to 100 dials per day. So it doesn't mean connected calls, but just dials. So picking up the phone and dialing. I would say 80 dials per day is very good. And as booking rate, 1 to 2% is an average. So if you're booking, 1 to 2% of your 80 dials, it's an average result, but you can aim for better. 4%, I would say, is a very good result. And above 5%, you are a top performer. So if you can achieve a 5% booking rate with 80 dials per day, you are doing very, very well. And I guarantee you that if you apply the scripts and all the tips in tonality and account research, planning, and context that I gave you, you can achieve the about 5% booking rate. So try everything out and let me know in the comments down below. Quick parenthesis on enterprise cold calling. So if you're selling to enterprise, as we said, number of dials is less. Your booking rate maybe is 2%, which is already great, because you'll have gatekeepers, people that will refer to other people. For a gatekeeper could be like a secretary of the CEO, so you're not able to directly talk with the CEO of the company or the CTO or whatever. You can lower these numbers as expectations if you're doing, for example, enterprise sales. Also, the number of dials per day really depends on how you set up your business. So, for example, if you're working in tech sales and you are an SDR, BDR, you'll have the majority of your time doing cold outreach, because that's mainly your role. If you are, a one-person business, maybe you're running an agency, you want more clients, or you have, a consulting business, or you are a lean team, 10 people, and you are the CEO doing the sales and doing also service delivery. Of course, you can't spend all your time calling, right? So it's better to have, just maybe 30 dials per day, so less than 80 to 100 dials per day, more research and more context, and use the rest part of your day to actually manage your business with service delivery, managing the team, invoices, and whatever you need, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are, business owner, one person business owner, or if I have a small team, you're not just a full-time SDR or BDR. So you can do cold calling, and that's great, because that will be the fastest way to get meetings booked for you and get deals in. But the reality is that you'll need also a bunch of time to run your business. So that's totally fine. So my message for you guys is that cold calling is simple but not easy. Lots of people overthink it. Lots of people don't take actions and won't go past the first 20 calls and 20 rejections. And this is exactly why cold calling works, because it's uncomfortable. People don't want to do it. People prefer to send thousands of emails or hundreds of LinkedIn messages. But I guarantee you that if you master this skill, your sales pipeline and sales results will skyrocket. So make sure you take action. Don't try to be perfect, but just do it and tweak your strategy along the way. So guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're interested into more sales topics. And let me know in the comments down below if you're implementing all these strategies. What are your results? I'm curious to know. And see you on to the next video.